When you think about negotiations in general, some components that come to my mind instantly, and one of the most important is leverage or power. And I'll use those interchangeably today throughout our discussion. But when I talk about leverage, I tend to break that down into a variety of different factors, right? For example, you could have leverage against the other side by using deadlines that impact them and don't impact you. You know, if you think about a labor negotiation, right? We're going on strike. It's happening tomorrow at midnight, and all of the concessions tend to happen right before midnight. That's a deadline that impacts both the buy side and the sell side effectively. But you also have deadlines that would only impact one side. So for example, if you want to buy this business, you have to tender an offer by 5 p.m. on Friday. Otherwise, we're not bringing you into the process. You're out. You have no opportunity to be able to buy the business. That doesn't affect you, the seller. It affects the buyer. And so time is one attribute to leverage. Another attribute to leverage that's extremely important to consider, and probably in my mind the most important, is optionality or competition. And I'll use those two terms interchangeably. Whenever you have an asset and you increase the number of buyers that are vying to acquire that asset, you're naturally going to raise the price. I mean, if you think about a public auction, right, and you're selling a Van Gogh painting, if you've got one buyer sitting there with his paddle out in the audience versus 100, it doesn't take a whole lot of common sense to determine you're in much better position having a lot of buyers out there, right? So competition is an extremely important aspect of leverage. But there are other aspects of leverage that are somewhat under the surface, and those are aspects such as necessity or desire. So when I think about necessity, it's not often that somebody's in a position where they have to sell their business. Now, it happens from time to time. I've seen business owners pass away and the family being stuck with a massive estate tax bill and being forced to sell, right? So that does happen. Deaths, divorces could, maybe not create necessity, but at least a strong desire to dispose of an asset. So necessity comes to play. So for example, if I had a business and I wanted to sell it and you came to me and said, hey, Paul, I'd really like to buy your business, and I needed to sell for whatever reason. Let's say that if I didn't sell it, I was going to go bankrupt because I have a lot of loans I've got to pay off. Well, the last thing that I would do as a seller is tell you that this is a forced sale or a fire sale, right? I mean, that would dramatically undercut the leverage in our discussion. So I would want to conceal that fact. The same thing comes in when we talk about desire, or the disparity of desire between a buyer and seller. At the end of the day, who wants to do the deal more tends to have the least amount of leverage in that sort of discussion. The old saying is, in order to get the best price, you've got to be able to walk away. Now, clearly, that works up until a point, and then sometimes you literally find yourself walking away with no deal, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to deal with that situation. But leverage or power is extremely important. And what I want to impress on you today is that leverage is often not absolute. Leverage is often perceptual. So just like beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, leverage is oftentimes in the eyes of the beholder as well. And both sides, both buyer and seller, can mold perceptions by how they run a process. And they could appear to be far stronger than they are.